Welcome back to Zestology. This is the podcast all about energy and vitality and living a more motivated life. I'm Tony Wrighton. Today, it's my final podcast of the year. It's my review of the year 2019, looking back at some highlights and lowlights of the year. And what I thought I'd do this year is kind of bring you my favourite interviews and sound bites of the year and kind of almost make it like a bit of a kind of personal diary of what's gone on during the year and go through some of my favourite interviews, but intersperse it with my favourite hacks and the things that have really made a difference to my life and energy levels this year. And it's been quite a year for me personally, so I've just kind of sat down before I started this and made a little list, and I think that's going to help as well. So yeah, there's going to be a few favourite interviews, a few favourite hacks, a few tweaks I've made to my life which have made a huge difference as well. And let's start this review of the year on Zestology with my interview that I did at the start of February with Haemin Sunim, best-selling author, a Buddhist monk, and he talks about mindfulness and slowing down. He's one of the most influential Zen Buddhist teachers and writers in the world. I'm pretty sure he's got more than 1 million followers on Twitter, and I met him in central London. And as you will hear, he instantly started turning negatives into positives. I felt so relaxed and kind of chilled just after meeting him. And I hope that you felt like that after listening to the podcast with him. Here's a little reminder of Haemin Sunim.
We can easily feel like a victim, of any circumstance. Like, for example, I was supposed to give a talk in wellness festival in Edinburgh last Saturday, but I was in the London City airport and waiting for my airplane to take off. It was already like 40 minutes late, and then we were sitting in this seat and waiting for the airplane to depart. However, 10 minutes later, they told me that actually we have a problem with engine, so this flight is now cancelled. So the next option for us was the 6 p.m. flight out of Heathrow Airport, and my talk was supposed to start at 3:30. Okay. So in this situation, I can easily feel like I'm a victim, of the situation. Like I was told 400 or 500 people were waiting for this session, and now I have to tell them that I cannot make it on time. However, I tried to rethink, so rather than feeling like I'm a victim, what would be the alternative? I tell to myself, just think of it as a mini vacation that I didn't expect. So I said, wow, all of a sudden I have Sunday off and Saturday, night off. So I, text my friend. I have one friend in London, and I asked him, are you free? We are supposed to meet tomorrow, Thursday. But if you are free today, I would love to have dinner with you. And he said yes. And then so I had a wonderful time with him. Also, I allow myself to have 8 hours of sleep, because I was having jet lag. So Sunday I took a very easy day. I didn't do a whole lot, but I had a wonderful time. I got to go to the St. Paul Cathedral, the morning service, which I love. Yeah, so it was a great, day.
And I mean, despite all that, when you were on the plane and they made the announcement, sorry, it's cancelled, there must have been a part of you.
Oh yes, yeah. The first, my gut instinct was, why is this happening to me? This is not fair. We've been waiting and we are sitting inside our seat. They could have told us even before, if this was going to be, the problem. However, we always have a choice. Are we going to dwell on our negative thoughts, or are we going to say, wait, okay, things happen and there's nothing we can do about this. However, I can choose to dwell on the positive stuff, and we can always find the silver lining.
There you go, Haemin Sunim on Zestology in February. So this is my review of the year. I can't believe we've got to the end of the year. It's from a Zestology point of view been a very enjoyable year. A year where I felt quite squeezed for time to record this podcast compared to years gone by, and that is because you'll know this if you've been listening to Zestology. I became a parent for the first time in March, and it's funny how there doesn't seem to be quite as much time to do stuff as there used to be. But becoming a parent, obviously, a huge thing, the biggest thing in my life this year by a long way, and so thrilled and sleep deprived despite all the Zestology recommendations. And I prepared for it quite well, actually, because our son was a couple of weeks early, but I just thought, you know what, I'm not going to have any spare time for a couple of months, so I stored a few podcasts up. And one of the podcasts that I recorded just before he was born was with best-selling time management and productivity expert Julie Morgenstein. She's been helping people save time for years, and she's been writing about parenting for years as well. So it was definitely a podcast of two halves. We started off talking about productivity, and then we talked about parenting. And one of her big things, by the way, is never checking email in the morning. Whether you're interested in increasing your productivity or you just want to be a better parent, don't check your email in the morning. Leave it for later in the day. So this is one of the podcasts I recorded, kind of had in the can, as they call it, in pro speak, just in case the baby arrived early, and he did. And her tips included never checking your email in the morning, laying out your home to being more present, doing the dishes with your partner, and being a media mentor to your child. Here's a little bit more of Julie Morgenstern.
Self-care, which is really goes when you have kids. You just start to feel so guilty. Your time gets divided between basically work and your family and your kids, and you feel any time you take for yourself is you're stealing it in a way. That's the way most parents feel. They're stealing it from their jobs or they're stealing it from their kids. But we need self-care to go the distance. We need self-care to feel like ourselves. And it is so hard parenting is a lot of problem solving. Like every day it's creative problem solving. There's a million things you have to figure out every day. And you need your energy, and you need to be grounded, and you need your creativity. So how do you fit in self-care? Here's the secret. Before we have kids, we do self-care in large blocks of time. We spend all day on Saturday and Sunday on our hobbies. We have long, long date nights. We hang out with our friends for hours over some beers or bottles of wine or long meals, and everything is a sort of long form. Once you have kids, you can't sustain the long form style of self-care. So you have to change your approach and develop short form styles of self-care. It's basically dosing self-care in 20-minute doses or less. And it's very revolutionary when you realize that. So exercise, you have to move from 90 minutes 3 times a week to, there are, the 8-minute workout, the 20-minute workout, the 10-minute workout. These are very, very viable, high impact, just as good for your body, mind, and soul as the long form. And those can be folded into your schedule.
It sounds like you might be exercising now. Are you multitasking here, Julie?
No, I am not. But the door to our office was just opened by somebody, and you heard the noise on the other side.
Yeah, it's okay. I was like, is she on a treadmill? Is she practicing what she preaches?
Waste not a moment. No, but multitasking is actually not something that I advocate. So we can get to that whenever you want. No, multitasking, not a good thing.
So that was Julie Morgenstern, and I did write an organic baby brands and baby accessories blog, believe it or not. And there's a reason behind this. Bear with me here. It's the last kind of baby chat in this podcast, but I'm so lucky to have become a parent. It's been an absolute roller coaster ride. I've loved every minute of it, apart from the odd punami here and there. But in the interests of a happy, healthy, thriving baby, I wanted to find the best, most natural baby products to create a natural home environment. And, Zestology is all about finding natural ways to live better. So I wrote this blog based around best organic baby products, natural non-toxic low EMF products as well, buying second-hand as much as possible, or hand-me-downs if possible as well, to help the environment. It became a bit of a labour of love. I spent ages on it. I don't really know why I spent quite so much time writing that blog, but anyway, if you're interested in that, if you've got kids or not, and you want to know some of the kind of natural non-toxic stuff that we did, then you can go to my Best Organic Baby Products 2019 blog, which is on tonyrighton.com. And it was quite enjoyable putting it together. So that was a big life event. That really was quite something. And let's move on now to April and to potentially the other big change in my life this year, and that is discovering the whole concept of histamine intolerance. This has just made a massive difference to my life. And in April I did the first interview on Zestology about histamine intolerance. And you might be listening to this and you might have heard me talking about it a little bit already on Zestology. You might be thinking, what even is histamine intolerance and why should I be concerned by it? And that is a very good question. It's very common though, up to 15% of people have it. And it turns out that I've been suffering with it for 25 years and I didn't know. And it has made a huge difference to my life discovering it this year. I mean, honestly, I always used to get a bad stomach. I'd always used to get achy knees and an achy back. And it's all changed. I won't say it's completely better now, but it has got so much better, radically different to how it used to be, all because of discovering histamine intolerance and following a low histamine diet and taking a few low histamine supplements as well. And in April, I started to delve into it a little bit deeper, and I spoke to Dr. Janice Janeja, who spoke a little bit more about histamine intolerance, and she explained, when the total body level of histamine gets too high, all sorts of unpleasant and quite odd symptoms can occur, and often it's not diagnosed as well. So you might be listening to this and thinking, yeah, I've always got a runny nose or a bad gut or a dodgy back or asthma or whatever it might be. And it might be down to histamine intolerance. Might be something else. But here she is. This is from my interview with Dr. Janice Janeja in April.
And a very interesting thing about histamine is the natural production of histamine in your body follows a circadian rhythm. And so people often have symptoms of histamine excess that occur early morning. Quite early, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock, they wake up and they've got a racing heart rate, they've got, itchy or all the symptoms that they might have. Now, the reason for that is twofold. One is that histamine is built up during the day because you've been consuming different histamine-containing foods, and that builds up the level of your bucket. But the maximum production, and this work has been done on laboratory animals, of course, rats and so on. But the maximum production of histamine is in the early morning hours. So between 2 and 5 in the morning, your maximum production of histamine in your body.
That's another thing that I've noticed. I feel very kind of clear-headed and I breathe very clearly overnight. And then early in the morning, maybe 6 or 7, but maybe my circadian clock's a bit later, I start to get stuffed up.
That's the one, yeah.
Wow.
That's because your histamine level has risen, of course, and when it's building up from your diet or environmental factors, if you have allergies or whatever point, whatever source your histamine is being increased. But then you've got your natural circadian rhythm production of histamine, which is going to be early morning, yeah.
Dr. Janice Janeja, one of my histamine intolerance guests this year on Zestology, it's probably been the biggest difference to my physical kind of well-being and my physical symptoms since I started Zestology, looking into histamine intolerance. And in fact, as a passion project on the side, I thought I'd just actually do some blogs and start a website about histamine intolerance, because I'm now so kind of well informed about it. As soon as you start feeling better on something, you start Googling it, you start looking into it more, and you want to kind of spread the word a little bit more. So if you're interested in my passion project, my sister site, that is histamineintolerance.net. histamineintolerance.net, and there's a quick quiz you can take there to see if you've got histamine intolerance. So that is the simplest thing to do. And also, if you do like that site, just sign up for the mailing list, and every 3 or 4 weeks or so, not more because I'm too busy, I'm not bigging myself up, but I don't need more work. But every 3 or 4 weeks or so, I'll send out a blog just for that histamine intolerance mailing list, and not the general mailing list. So it's just a little passion project. I'm really passionate about getting the word out about this to more people, and if you were to follow this and feel as good as I have through doing it, that would be cracking. On to May, and definite friend of the show, John Gray, the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, the most popular book about relationships worldwide of all time. And it was a very emotional interview with John. John happened to be in London for a couple of days, and he was very honest with me about losing his wife. His wife had died just a few months before that. They'd been married over 30 years. And I really appreciated John's honesty. You know, he's always talked about relationships, and he didn't shy away from talking about his wife and from his grief. It was an emotional interview, and here's a little taster of it.
I was going through a lot of grieving. My wife of 33 years, Bonnie, she's in all my books. Back last year, over 8 months ago, she passed. And so your life, everything changes. So It was a nice diversion for me, a little distraction. Not that I want to be distracted too much, because the grieving process is one of reflecting and remembering. Forgiveness of yourself is a big one, and appreciation, and then gratitude and forgiveness, and waves and waves of feeling, until you can be presented with the same old situations, remembering her, without that knife in your heart. I'm still with a half knife in my heart when it comes up, but it's sweet, because the reason we grieve is because we have attachment. We have attachment because we love. And we shared such a beautiful life together, and now I'll carry her forward in my work. I couldn't have written any of my books without her help. She was there for me 100%, and her wisdom is in my books as well.
Well, I didn't know if you were going to mention it or not, but I just wanted to say I'm so sorry to hear that she passed, and obviously I know just from how much you talked about her in the previous podcast that we recorded, just what a profound influence she was on your life, and how close you were together and how long you spent together.
One of the things she asked that I play at her funeral was from the play Wicked, a song, "Because of You, I'm better," or something like that, and I'm good. And I just look at our whole relationship, and I see how women, my wife, had the power to bring out the very, very best of me, and how much I grew in that relationship through her love. And it's unfortunate today that we don't really have the skills to keep love open and alive. It kind of is in the beginning of a relationship. For most people, it's automatic, and because there's a newness. That newness stimulates the brain chemical dopamine. It gives us a lot of pleasure, so there's a natural instinct and motivation to do things and overcome, jealousies, overcome resentments, overcome insecurities when you're with that person, and having a lot of energy to give to them. And then over time, because familiarity sets in, that produces more of the brain chemical serotonin. So we become comfortable, and that ease and comfort is a good thing. What you want to have is both the passion and the comfort. And we were able to maintain that for we were together 40 years. So
that's just the secret, isn't it?
Keeping
the passion, but the comfort as well.
Yeah.
It's quite hard to get that balance.
Yeah, it is. I think anything has its challenges, but it's almost impossible if you don't have an understanding that we'll be talking about today. I think that the whole idea of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, remembering that we're different and understanding those differences in a new light, because the world's changed dramatically. Women have become more masculine, and men actually are experiencing lower male hormones and higher female hormones. I don't like to say men are becoming more feminine, because they don't like that. Whereas when you say to women they're becoming more masculine, they kind of go, yeah, I can do it. So an example of men becoming more feminine is becoming overly emotional, overly needy, overly sensitive, anger, a lack of motivation, and a major one is playing too much. Playing games, video games, watching TV, too much sports, too much beer. Life is about playing and working hard. And it used to be, just the way culture was set up. And I'm not saying we have to turn it back. I say we have to have greater awareness on how to maintain a balance inside ourselves. But when I was growing up as a kid, I knew I had to make money, have a job, because my wife wasn't going to have that. And so you feel that huge responsibility, like you got to do it. And if you have the right support, you have the confidence to do it. And that confidence to do something increases male hormones. So what we see today is a disaster of men's male hormones going down. It's the fuel for men. And when I talk about male hormones, I'm primarily talking about testosterone. There's a few others, and often testosterone gets a bad rap because it was misunderstood. We used to associate aggression with testosterone. It turns out, now the science proves that when men are aggressive, or when they're irritable, when they're angry, when they're argumentative, when they're passive, when they're procrastinating, or when they're depressed, their testosterone levels are low. It's like the best of men comes out when their testosterone's high.
Yeah, definitely emotional meeting John Gray in May, and I do appreciate his honesty in that interview. And actually, I interviewed him again in September when he was in London as well. So if you like John, and you like a bit of men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and you are for radically restructuring your relationships and appreciating the gender differences as well as the gender similarities between you and your partner, then John is the man to go to. Carl Morris, I wanted to include a quick clip from Carl Morris, who I spoke to in June of this year on Zestology. And the reason is, I just thought it was quite a good title. Title of the podcast. I mean, the podcast itself was brilliant. Carl is also a friend of the show and is always an excellent podcast guest. He is one of the UK's top sports psychologists and mind game coaches. And we did a podcast called Why Hairdressers Have Bad Hair. Here's why.
Yeah, it's like the old thing about hairdressers having bad haircuts and for physicians heal thyself.
That is brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why we all need coaching, Tony. I think, because I think, that phrase, when you're in the system, you can't see the system, is very apt, isn't it? And I think it doesn't necessarily have to be formal coaching, but I think even if you've got somebody you can just honestly sort of get some neutral feedback from is very useful. I also think stepping out of your own world on a regular basis is a good thing. I know you've done that regularly over the years. I mentioned to you, I've just been in China for a couple of weeks with the Mind Factor, and it was such a culture shock being over there. It's such a very different country, but it was good. It was good because it allowed me to think back. When I get back, there's a few things you need to sort of perhaps look at and pay attention to, that you on a day-to-day basis. Monday rolls into Tuesday, and all of a sudden another week's gone by. So I think stepping out of your everyday world, whenever not every week obviously, but when you get a chance to, I think it's a very beneficial thing to do. And I know you've done a lot of it. I think that's why going on courses is such a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
A, because you hopefully learn something, but B, because you just step out of your normal world.
Yeah, helps you to kind of think a bit more about the big picture when you're not just kind of mired in the nitty gritty.
Yeah, yeah.
And then what about the coaching aspect? I mean, obviously, I don't want to call you a veteran, Carl, but you've been coaching for a long time.
Experience, I think.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Do you still get coached yourself? Do you still turn to mentors or other people? And so you coached me for a while, didn't you? And I found that so helpful.
Yeah, I
do you still do that yourself?
Yeah, I think that's one of the great. We were talking earlier before we started, and I think that's one of the great things of doing podcasts, isn't it? That you get a chance to speak to other people who've had different experiences. You've been successful in other fields, and I remember the podcast I do, speaking to people like Ellen Langer, and just phenomenal people that you can't help but listen to what they have to say and their life experiences, and then you sit and reflect. And John Barge, another guy that came on the show, wrote a great book, Before You Know It, all about the effect of the unconscious and also the effect of your environment. And I just thought he was a phenomenal guest, and it really got me thinking about the triggers around me on a daily basis that we just take for granted because that's your office or that's your living room or whatever. But we don't realise what impact those things are having.
Yeah, that Ellen Langer interview was brilliant. I really enjoyed that. And do you find that sometimes when you do podcasts, you it ends up being just a load of questions that you want answered.
Absolutely. And to her great credit, I mean, I managed to get the interview with Ellen Langer, and I likened it to sort of, she for me would be kind of like the Tiger Woods of psychology. You know, it's that equivalence that somebody's held in such high esteem, and she agreed to do it. And to her great credit, I did it for the first time, and I made a balls of the Skype recording, so it didn't record correctly. So I have to ask her to do it again. So it was like the worst, the best, and the worst in a way, that I made a mess of the first recording, but she was kind enough to do it again.
From Carl Morris to B. Johnson, who I also spoke to in June. B. Johnson is the best-selling global author of Zero Waste Lifestyle. Her thing is all about simplifying your life and helping you and helping the environment as well. She really says you should live a life based on experiences instead of stuff. And this appealed to me and my partner so much, Faith. We've, talked quite a lot about how we can do more for the environment and just not have too much clutter. Especially when you've got kids, the amount of nonsense and clutter you can accumulate if you're not very careful. And I quite also like having a kind of calm, simplified home environment where there's not that much clutter there as well. So B. Johnson's thing is less stuff, more simplicity, helping the environment, more energy for the things that matter, and saving money. And I spoke to her in June on Zestology to get a few tips for me, really. So it's kind of partly selfish, but also for the podcast too.
In the past, we were buying paper towels, right? Like a lot of people buy paper towels.
Yes.
But in order to buy the paper towels, you have to go to the store. And typically, it's packed in, it's a big pack. So you typically need a car to bring it home. It will take half your trunk, well, especially with the packs of, the sizes of the packs that they sell in the US, where I live. And then once you bring it home, you have to store it. And in our case, just to bring it to the front door, we'd have to carry it 36 steps. And then we'd have to store it. It would take, a whole shelf just to store it. Then once we've used it, we would have had to separate the plastic from the paper, from the cardboard, if we wanted to separate it, sort it right. Then we'd have to, put all those items in plastic bags or in trash bags, which we would have also purchased, to then take it all the way back down 36 steps to put it on the curb for the trash company to take these things, away. And then we'd have to go back to the store to buy more.
Right.
Now,
and what do you do instead?
This is one example amongst hundreds of products that we've eliminated in our house. We've swapped the paper towels for rags. So the rags, we just throw them in the wash. And of course, when you use rags, you're not using them like paper towels. Paper towels, you use them only once. A rag, you're just going to use it, you rinse it, you use it again. I mean, we use about 2 or 3 rags a week, and we just throw it with our, regular clothes. And so it's just, it's just super simple. It stays in the house. There is no hauling down, or there is no traveling to the store and then back and then hauling up and down the stairs. It just eliminates all that. So when you eliminate all disposables, not only does it save time not having to deal with them, but also obviously money not having to buy those things. And that's money that you can actually spend doing something more important, going on a trip or doing activities with your family.
Well, this is the Zestology Review of the Year, or you might want to call it the Christmas Special, whatever you like to call it. Packed, hopefully, with some good ideas from across the year in terms of energising your life, living with more vitality, a bit more motivated as well. And in July, I spoke to one of my best pals, and he's been on Zestology many times as well, Dr. Stephen Simpson. He is a high-performance coach. He trains a lot of elite poker players and people in lots of different sports and non-sporting coaching as well. And he's just a terrific bloke. And he told me about the £12 purchase that had changed a life. I won't tell you any more. I will let him describe what it was. Warning, you may well be going out and buying these after you hear Dr. Steve talking about it. And I'm not even sure if they work or not, but it was a good story. Tell me about these magic foot pads that you've been wearing.
Oh, you liked that story, didn't you?
Oh, it's amazing.
Well, I've only been using these foot pads for a few days, and the idea, they're called antitoxin foot pads, and the idea is that there's all kinds of different vegetables and stuff, and it comes in like a sachet, and you tape it to the sole of your foot and to both feet, and you sleep with these pads on, and in the morning you peel the pads off, and I'm not joking, the first time I did it, I mean, I thought, what on earth has gone wrong here? It's like black tar. It's very sticky, and it's very black, pure black. And according to the literature, these are the toxins being drawn out of your body. Now, don't ask me the science behind that. There may not be any. But if you go to Amazon or any other sites and put in, antitoxin foot pads, you'll see hundreds of reviews of people who, just swear by them.
So they're white pads. I just had a Google before we started talking. It looks like it's all natural ingredient.
I think it is.
It's like essential oils or something. And you tape it to your foot. So basically it gets hot, presumably, and your feet sweat at night.
Do they?
Well, I'm just trying to think how it works.
I don't know how it works, Tony. I mean...
But it's black when you take it off in the morning.
It is black.
With toxin.
That's what they say it is. It's black with something.
How extraordinary. And hundreds of good reviews on Amazon.
Yes, I know you saw that, didn't you?
And you said you've been doing it for a few days. Mm-hmm. How do you feel on it?
I feel pretty good, but then normally I do anyway. But if I've noticed one thing, then, certainly the night before last, I had a wonderful sleep. Because I'm one of these people, I get off to sleep easily, but then, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm awake, and then I'll start thinking about things and sometimes find it hard to go back. But anyway, so I've had, so far, I've had one great night's sleep on it.
Wow.
So, I mean, I'll keep you updated, but I'm a bit of a junkie for these things. I think you are as well. You're probably a bit more analytical than me, but... I take the view, I'll try anything once. But if I see things that have had really good reviews, I think, well, there's got to be something here, so I'll try it.
Do they smell strong?
They don't really smell of anything. No.
I would have thought that they'd smell strongly. I don't know, tea tree oil or something like that.
No, they don't.
How did you find out about these?
Well, I'm slightly going to change the story just to preserve the anonymity. But let's say that I was a member of a club, and there was some grumpy old man there who has always ignored me. You know how men particularly can get grumpy when they get a bit older, unlike me. They just become more mellow. And I thought, well, I don't know what his problem is. And but we went to a lunch, and he was there, and I thought, oh gosh, this is going to be a long, it's going to feel like a long lunch, this one. But he was the life and soul. And
so he's normally grumpy.
He's normally grumpy. Normally, and people said, "Don't take this personally. He's like this with everybody."
Yes,
he's just one of these sort of grumpy or quiet people.
Yeah,
self-contained. Anyway, this person, without being domineering, was the life and soul of the lunch. And he went to the bathroom, and somebody said, "Do you notice how different he is? Who's going to ask him?" So somebody said, "You're in good form. Are you doing anything different? Are you taking any magic pills from the doctor or anything?" He said, "No, but the last couple of months I have been doing something different," and he's been using these foot pads. And so somebody said, "Well, how does it make you feel?" And he said, "It makes me feel happy." He said, can't explain why, but I've never felt as happy as this. And all these people who I hardly know, these people said, "Well, you're certainly very different."
Yeah.
And as soon as I heard that story, I went straight, got onto Amazon and ordered some. They don't cost an arm and a leg for a foot pad. And I'm just trying them out, and I'll report back. Like I say, I've only been doing it for a few days, but the reviews are all there, and I'm certainly going to try it for at least a couple of weeks.
I just looked it up online before we started recording, and it said one of the things is, in the morning, the toxins that come out are so strong, don't touch them. That might be great marketing speak.
It could be.
But don't touch the black bit on the pads in the morning.
Yeah. Well, when you look at it, I can assure you wouldn't want to. But you probably would put your fingers straight in.
It's not just you.
No, it's not me. It's definitely not me. Everybody talks about the black gungy stuff.
I've never heard of that before,
No.
but I think that you have probably increased their sales massively in the last few minutes, because everyone will be trying it.
Well, I'd better say I'm not paid to endorse this. I'm just, giving you the feedback.
Are they cheap?
I think a pack which lasts about 10 days is about £12.
Yeah.
So it's affordable.
Yeah. That is fascinating.
Yeah.
There you go, Dr. Stephen Simpson on Zestology. You can listen to that whole podcast if you want on the Zestology archives on my website, TonyWrighton.com. Now, also in July, episode 231, I've got to interview a few people this year that I can genuinely say, I wouldn't say they're heroes as such, but I've desperately wanted to interview for a long time, desperately wanted to meet, and was very excited to do so. And Matthew Walker was one of those. You might well have read the book, Why We Sleep. I already had, and I'd enjoyed it, and it's one of those books that has captured the zeitgeist and kind of captured people's imaginations as well in terms of improving the way we sleep. Matthew Walker is definitely one of the world's foremost sleep researchers and experts, and we arranged an interview with him while he was staying in London. He's a Brit, but he lives over in the States, in California, I think. He's one of the world's top sleep researchers. I think it's Stanford University that he runs their sleep lab there. Anyway, we went to meet Matt, and he was staying at an Airbnb in central London. And he said, look, can we do the interview here? It really suit me. He was doing a talk in the evening, which I went to as well. So we went to his Airbnb and recorded there. And it was rather ironic because his rented flat was opposite. I'm not quite sure who rented this flat, but I don't know if it was Matt or Matt's people, but it was opposite the renowned establishment Tiger, which you might, if you're American, you might not know what Tiger means, but if you're British, you probably do. Tiger is a loud nightclub that closes at about 4 o'clock in the morning. So the world's top sleep guru had not had a great night's sleep at all because his bedroom was directly opposite the entrance of Tiger, and it gets pretty boisterous at 4 a.m. as well. So actually that was the perfect chance for me to talk to him about his sleep schedule and what he does when he is faced with challenges like sleeping across from Tiger. Matt Walker is a really good man to listen to on the subject of sleep, and let's just refresh our memory on a little bit of the conversation that I had with him.
When you're starting to struggle with sleep at night, and usually I'm a pretty good sleeper and I regiment my sleep and I hopefully know the things to do, but when it's a bad night, I think the key thing is not to get too stressed. I'm sure we'll probably speak about all of the desperate ills and the harmful effects of a lack of sleep, and there are plenty. Yeah. But it's also just don't get too stressed about it. It's going to be a bad night. That's okay. You'll get back into set the next night. It will be fine. I've got some earplugs now. I'll close the windows. I'll be fine.
Right. Okay. It's easier said than done, isn't it? But,
yeah.
So obviously you're on the road at the moment. You're doing this presentation in London tonight, which I'm coming to, which I'm really looking forward to. And what's the kind of on the road sleep regime? You said you've got some earplugs.
Yeah.
What
face
else?
Mask.
Face mask. Yeah. They're a face mask or just eyes?
Well, it's sort of. It's mostly eyes, but it's sort of one of those that tucks under the bridge of the nose and really tries to seal out. So, darkness. And then when I'm traveling, especially sort of when I come back home to the UK, I usually will use melatonin strategically about an hour before bed just to sort of help my body listen to a slightly different circadian rhythm than the one that it wants to drum out, which is because I am 8 hours behind in terms of my timing. So usually those are the things that I'll sort of keep to hand.
Okay. No blue blockers in the luggage?
I don't, but I typically stay away from screens in the last hour before bed, and then I will dim down half of the lights wherever I am. And it's a good hack, actually, because, I think people would be surprised at how soporific low light is. It's one of the reasons that, if you go camping and there's very little electric light, you typically start to drift towards an earlier and earlier bedtime. And most people think, well, it's just because there's not much to do. There's no Netflix, there's no kind of BBC iPlayer to watch. Yes, there's probably some of that, but it's also the fact that you're getting a huge darkness signal that you wouldn't get otherwise. And in this modern era, we are a dark-deprived society. And I think that's one of the reasons that we have sleep problems. And I don't say that without science. There was a great study where they looked at people who had done iPad reading for 1 hour before bed versus just reading a normal book in dim light. And there were 3 critical findings. The first was that the iPad actually decreased the amount of melatonin, excuse the sirens.
Don't worry about it, it's fine.
So the iPad actually decreased the amount of melatonin release, this critical hormone of darkness that helps regulate the healthy timing of sleep. Decreased that by 50%, 50. So it slashed your melatonin release in half.
For the whole night? Or?
For the whole night, yeah.
Yeah.
The second was that it delayed the onset of the peak of that melatonin by about 3 hours. So you're probably much closer to, being in sort of Prague time than you are, sort of London time at that stage. The final thing was that it actually disrupted REM sleep as well. And what they also found when they asked people the next morning, how refreshed do you feel? How restored by your sleep do you feel? And after 1 hour of iPad reading before bed, people felt consistently less refreshed by their sleep. And what was even more fascinating was that they tracked them. And after they stopped using the iPad, the effect still had a blast radius for about 2 or 3 days afterwards.
No way.
So there's this dose response that it's almost like taking a drug, that it takes some days to clear out your system. So this is just 1 hour of iPad reading. So you can imagine the effects of nightly computer work on your sleep and your disrupted sleep.
Well, that is episode 231, if you want to listen to the whole thing. I want to fast forward through the year now. We haven't got long left on this review of the year 2019, but I did record a podcast live at the Health Optimization Summit, featuring hacks, gadgets, experts, and more. That was episode number 238. And what I did for this one is, for years there have been health I really call them festivals, but conferences, I suppose they're often called, or summits in the States. And the Bulletproof Conference and Paleo FX are two kind of famous ones. It's a very, very enjoyable way to spend a weekend because you get to hear loads of good talks. You get to walk around lots of stalls with lots of kind of cutting edge products that you might want to kind of take or use or consume in terms of increasing your energy and vitality and your productivity or your longevity or whatever it might be. But until now, there's never been one in Britain. I'm very happy to say that there is now, because the Health Optimization Summit took place in September here in the UK. So I recorded a podcast, and I recorded it on the Saturday and the Sunday, and I went home on Sunday night, and this is how keen I am. I edited on the Sunday night all the kind of bits that I've recorded across the festival, and then published it on the Monday morning. And some of the things that I tried out in this podcast were localized cryotherapy, getting rid of EMFs with gadgets, the nootropic that turns your tongue blue, the Sensate meditation pebble. I spoke to Dr. B, who is Tony Robbins' personal energy guru. I found a new tracking app. We drank healthy biodynamic wines that don't give you a hangover, and lots more kind of hacks, gadgets and geeks. And here's a little taster of that podcast from September. Okay, so I'm currently just getting localized cryotherapy on my knee. My knee's not that bad, but I've just fancied some localized cryotherapy from the guys at Cryoscience and Amelia, who is doing it.
Hi, guys.
Did I pronounce your name right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, what's happening?
Right now we are cooling down your skin.
Yeah, it's starting to feel really cold.
The vapor temperature is minus 162 Celsius, and your skin temperature is right now between 9, 6, 7 Celsius.
Yeah,
so it's pretty cold.
It's really cold now on my knee.
Yeah, it should be.
It's really cold.
It should be.
When you started doing it, I kind of felt like it felt quite nice, but now it feels very cold.
Now we start the main procedure for treatment, because right now where your skin temperature is cold enough. So now we start the inflammation.
Yes. Okay. So I've done whole body cryotherapy before, and I know you've got a Cryoscience tank there.
Yeah.
But
this is Cryo Penguin, and this is Cryo Arctic.
This is Cryo Penguin.
Yes,
okay.
That's why we have penguin there.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. So regular listeners to this podcast will know that I'm a total geek and I love tracking. And I think I've found somebody who likes tracking as much as me.
Maybe more.
Let me ask you what your name is and what you are exhibiting here.
Yeah, so my name is Dave Korsunski. Our company is called Heads Up, and we're here at the Health Summit showing off what we call a personal health dashboard, because we all have certain health statistics that are important to us. Some people here are very healthy, they're just trying to perform better. Other people are very sick, and they're thinking about self-preservation. And it all comes down to the numbers. The numbers tell us if our state of disease is getting better or worse, if our performance is getting better or worse. You and I were just talking about how a couple glasses of alcohol can destroy a good night's sleep. And how would you measure that? And how would you know? How would that show up in your heart rate variability? So we basically just put the numbers together. You don't have to be a rocket scientist, a health nerd, you don't have to be tech savvy. You just track the numbers that help you understand your health.
Oh my God, I mean, this is like, you have to realise that in all the kind of episodes, the health episodes that I've done on Zestology and all the spreadsheets that I've kept over the last few years, you've basically gone and done all the heavy lifting.
Well,
so
we're
I don't
looking
have
at
to.
I'm pulling up for those listening, the initial version of this whole software platform was an Excel sheet. I had the results from my doctors, because I'd moved around a bunch. I had the metrics I was collecting on my own. So we're just building something that is much more elegant.
Yeah. I mean, let me just describe it for people listening. At the moment, I'm seeing a big desktop version of your program, which is called Heads Up.
Yep.
And there's lots of very pretty metrics on the screen, which tell me that you slept for 10 hours and 21 minutes last night. Is that last night? Or
That was 2 nights ago.
That was 2 nights ago, okay.
Yeah. Last night I didn't sleep a wink because of jet lag.
Okay, so it's better to get 2 nights ago up. Yeah.
So I'm actually averaging, if I got 0 last night, I'm averaging about 5 hours and 10 minutes. I can work with that.
Yeah. So, and then you've got carb tolerance, and you've got fasting, and you've got your morning readiness score, and you've got your HRV and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Are you able to bring up correlations? So it might say, on the days that you are in ketosis, you feel better, for example.
So this is a 2-part problem. In order to be able to do that, the first thing we have to do is get all the data in one place. So we spent 3 years gluing all these pipes together so that the data from my Oura Ring can show up with the data next to my glucometer and the results from my blood work.
Yeah.
The next logical step is to build intelligence into the software.
Yeah.
Right now you have to go find those patterns manually using our graphing and charting tools, and they're there.
Okay. Oh yeah. Well, that looks nice. Yeah. So you can.
Phase 2 is to actually get to the point where the software can do that automatically.
Well, I've just been strolling down the aisleways of the Health Optimization Summit, and I've bumped into Roger Meacock, who is working with a product that helps alleviate the effect of EMFs. Roger, tell me more.
Okay, as we know, EMFs are causing inflammatory reactions in the body. We know one of the main ways that they cause that is by changing the voltage-gated ion channels. Not just calcium, but all of them. It's changing the biophysical properties of the cells. So you can try and mitigate for that in various different ways. There are devices which can try and shield. With some of the shielding elements, if the phone signal can't get a strong enough connection, it will actually increase the power, so you can actually get a worse problem than you're trying to correct.
Oh dear, because I'm recording this on my phone right now, and you'll see that there is actually a shielding device on my phone. So what you're saying is that might not work very well.
It might not work very well.
Oh dear.
The other thing is some of them will filter out some of the higher frequencies, but actually you can't stop the ultra low frequencies either, and they have a biological effect. So not a good effect. So these EMFs are not good for our long-term health. Absolutely.
What do? They cause inflammation, and we don't really quite know a lot of the effects.
There's a lot of different results. So they'll disrupt hormones. Infertility is a big rising problem. Chronic inflammation obviously is the backbone to a lot of chronic diseases, so you're looking at autoimmune disease, cancers of various degrees. Obviously glioma is the one that has come to mind because people are putting the phones right close to their heads, and even the safety instructions of the mobile phones will tell people to use their phone like a centimetre and a half from their head. Yes. But actually, there's been 2 studies, one done in 2017, one very recently in the States, where they showed that where most people put their phone right next to their head, they are massively exceeding the SAR rates, which we know themselves are inadequate.
And people, by the way, don't know that the manufacturer's own instructions for the iPhone, for example, say, don't ever touch your body with it.
Yeah. How can you not carry it on you?
How can you hear if you don't stick it to your ear?
Exactly.
So that was the Health Optimization Summit, and that'll be back next year, and I'm looking forward to that already. It's good to have something like that in London. Now, I told you that I'd interviewed some people that I had desperately wanted to interview this year, and The person that's coming up next is probably the closest that I've got to a hero. I mean, I don't want to kind of go over the top about him, but Chris Ryan is an author that I love, a podcaster that I love, and a very hard man to track down because, as he says, he's got the work ethic of a hunter-gatherer, which means he doesn't actually like doing very much work. He likes just relaxing a lot, and fair play to him. So I did get quite excited about today's podcast. I had to try very hard not to be a fanboy when recording this particular interview. I love Chris's stories and his thoughts about everything from kind of travelling in India to polyamorous relationships to lots more. To me, he's like the best lecturer you never had in all sorts of disciplines: sociology, anthropology, history and sexuality. And he's brought out his new book in the last few months, Civilized to Death, and we recorded a podcast. It was episode number 244 in October, and here was Chris Ryan on Zestology.
I think that it's an intellectual mistake that we tend to make to look at our world and the beneficial aspects of our world and ignore the costs of those benefits, or we just don't see them because we weren't there when the costs were paid, right? So it's very tempting to say, oh, we're so lucky we have antibiotics, without understanding that the diseases that those antibiotics protect us from are almost entirely the result of civilization. So, if we're looking at influenza or smallpox or cholera or malaria or tuberculosis, like you name it, all the greatest killers of humanity in terms of contagious diseases resulted from civilization. They didn't exist for our hunter-gatherer ancestors. They either jumped over from domesticated animals, cattle, pigs, chickens, etc. So these are pathogens that jumped over from those animals into humans when we started living in close quarters with domesticated animals, which of course hunter-gatherers don't do. And they are also resultant from living in highly packed, high population density, settled villages. So they can, once a disease does jump into the human population, it can spread really quickly because we're packed in so tightly together. And thirdly, because we're living in our own sewage for the first time in these settlements, until very recently. So we're talking about thousands of years where people were, human and animal waste was just all over the place. And so that's where you get your cholera and your other diseases of sanitation. So it seems to make a lot of sense to say, thank God for vaccinations. But when you really understand the way human life was before civilization, you realize that that's like saying, thank God for airbags and seatbelts. Our ancestors all must have died in auto accidents, There were no cars, so it doesn't really make sense to be praising these late, recent solutions to problems that were actually created by civilization. And it's not just a question of vaccines. You could expand this discussion to medicine in general. So many of the things that modern medicine is adequate at addressing are results of civilization. Heart disease, diabetes, circulatory problems, stroke, dental problems, cavities, and impacted wisdom teeth, and these are all results of civilization. They're all results of our diminished nutrition, our lack of exercise. These are all diseases of civilization that then civilization turns around and says, you should congratulate us for these partial fixes to problems that we've actually caused. It makes no sense.
Yeah. And I mean, I know Civilized to Death has been quite a long time in the making since your last book came out. And I think you said it kind of start to finish about 5 years, wasn't it, this book?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's so hard to measure these things. I can tell you that I signed the contract to write the book probably 8 years ago, and so the first deadline I blew through was probably 7 years ago. I walk the talk in the sense that I have the work ethic of a hunter-gatherer, which is not very disciplined. People think hunter-gatherers were living on the verge of starvation and just a constant struggle to survive, and that whole, what I call the neo-Hobbesian narrative. In fact, hunter-gatherers rarely work more than 20 hours a week. And the things that they're doing that we're referring to as work are things that we tend to refer to as vacation time. They're hunting, they're fishing, they're walking around in the woods gathering berries. They're basically picnicking. So yeah, if I say I have the work ethic of a hunter-gatherer, that means it takes me a long time to get anything done.
Yeah. From Chris Ryan, who I hadn't spoken to before, to a man who I've spoken to many times on this podcast, Brett Moran. He's normally based in Thailand. I mean, you've probably heard Brett before on Zestology. Normally based in Thailand, but he was in London at the start of November, and we recorded a podcast on how to deal with 4.5 hours of sleep. I think I'd had 4.5 hours of sleep when we recorded the podcast. And we also talked about staring into someone's eyes for 63 minutes, breath work and how it can sometimes feel like a mild stimulant, and celebrating your successes as well. Brett Moran was, he's definitely a friend of the show, and he was visiting London, so came to stay for the night, and we just busted out the recording gear the next day.
I mean, here we are in West London, and honestly, I couldn't be happier. I really love it. But there is part of me, the hippie part, and probably the part of my partner Faith, that would love to just live by the beach with no bills.
Yeah.
And you've got that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
When you think about 10 years, 15 years down the line, do you ever think about that, or do you just kind of take it as it goes? I mean, would you like to stay there? Do you have particular ambitions, or are you so in the moment that you don't really bother?
Well, to be really honest, I love where I live, and that's my dream or goal or whatever it is, ambition is to build a place there and just continue doing what I'm there. But I don't think I've got that drive or that kind of hunger that I used to have when I was younger. Like, I'm going to smash it, I'm going to do this. Something's really changed in me in the last sort of year, even since we first started talking and podcasting. So it's there, and it's what I like to do. But then even, I came here and it's like last night I laid to bed, I was like, oh, it's a lovely family, you've got a nice house, you've got your son, you've got your partner. And so I think it's like, I think the ego, because I know that's not me, but the ego, it's like it always wants sometimes what somebody else has got, or it always like compares, or it does this. And even if I'm sitting on the beach, I probably won't say that tomorrow when I'm on the beach drinking coconuts, but I still have those moments where I'm like, I wonder where I will be in 10 years, because if I keep doing that, I'm not going to have like a mortgage or that sort of lifestyle. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I have those more. I don't think I'd ever give it up. I think once you've had, Einstein said, once the mind's expanded, it can never go back to its original form. Yeah. And so for me, once I've had like a year out travelling, I don't think I could ever go back.
Well, that was the one at the front door, but we're all right. It's quite good, this podcast, because we just don't know how long it's going to be, because Stan might make up at any moment.
Yeah, it's quality, just crack on. Have you got him on the podcast yet?
He's made a few guest appearances.
Cool.
Like, I've done a couple of podcasts when he was really young and massively kicking off in the background, and it is so distracting. You can't concentrate on anything.
Just give him a laptop to play on.
Yeah. Give him a screen.
Give him a screen, he'll be fine.
Well, apparently, apparently there are programs made for babies his age. I mean, we haven't shown him any of them, but like, he's really stimulated anyway by just sitting in that bouncer with a toy octopus in front of him. He doesn't need a screen with loads of bright lights on it.
No, there's a lot
to be honest, I notice if I'm sitting on the sofa, and you realise the addictiveness of kind of lights and screens for humans, because if I've got, say, Sky News on in the background or something, he will be glued to it.
Yeah,
he will be glued, and I don't think he's interested in Brexit. It's just the lights and the colours and the visual
stimulating the brain.
Stimulation of it. The brain, you do always want what you haven't got, haven't you? And I think, because I'm sure a lot of people listen to this and think, oh, I'd love to live in Thailand.
Yeah.
But so it's nice to know that every once in a while you think, oh, it'd be quite nice to live in Chiswick.
Once a year. Once a year I get it. When I come to see you.
Yeah.
No, but you've got a great life, great family, beautiful family. It's amazing.
Thanks,
so
thank you.
And I think everybody just thinks a little bit, I've got this, but what would it be like with that?
Mate, just before we finish, we were looking on my prompting last night at your Amazon page for your book.
Yeah.
You got loads of reviews for that now, for Wake the Fuck Up.
Yeah.
It's done brilliantly, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's done good. Yeah.
I just want to point people to it again,
Nice one.
because remember when I first met you and heard the title, I thought, that's a bit bold.
Yeah.
Wake the Fuck Up. Wow. And actually, it's all about your story from going to prison and meditation and kind of turning your life around and getting off drugs. Is that right as well?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and it's resonated with people, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think the best thing I get from it is like, even these 2 years or 3 years later since it was published, like even last week, I get messages from people that have read the book and they really feel like it's helped them or impact them, you know, the message or the techniques. I've just shared stuff that I've learned to change my life. It's not my stuff. I've just passed it on, basically. And it's just beautiful just to see that people are taking control of their lives or understanding their ego or giving up some addictions a little bit. Yeah, that to me is that's the money spinner. Yeah.
And something that I ask everyone on the podcast, I asked you loads of times before, and I meant to ask you at the start of the podcast, in fact it was going to be the first thing that I asked you about, is you've been reading a book by a presidential candidate,
yes,
haven't you? So for the one book that you recommend, maybe you could talk about that one.
100%. Yeah, it's called A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson.
Yeah.
And it really is talking about, there's only two, if you really focus or think about it in her way, there's only two emotions or feelings, and they are fear or love. And fear can come in many different disguises. It can be, you know, insecurities, jealousies, obsessions, addictions, all this stuff, judgments about yourself or other people, or there's just love, which is just bliss. It's freedom, it's joy, it's happiness, it's easy, it's peaceful. And the book just shows you how to really come back to yourself and just come back to your centre and go, okay, do I need to judge that person that's doing this? Or is that argument I've got going on with this? Do I need to, or can I just come from a place of love? It doesn't mean to say that you need to be a doormat, but it's just showing you how to really come back to what I think really is what life is all about. You know, we're looking at little Stan playing with his thing. It's just, to me, it's just pure joy and pure love. And all the stuff we learn as we grow up kind of gets us into fear or into judgment. And so her book, she wrote it many, many years ago. It's a really successful book. And it makes perfect sense that now she's trying to become president, because I think the world needs a bit of love right now, especially in politics, which is not my kind of area, but it would be nice just to sort of like change the way things are from a different angle, because what we're doing seems to not be so great for a lot of people.
Well, this is my Zestology review of the year 2019. Hope you're enjoying it. And I've been kind of interspersing it with a few hacks and lifestyle changes that I've made this year, not least the histamine intolerance one. And remember, my histamine intolerance site is histamineintolerance.net. It's a little passion project, a side site. Let me know what you think of it if you go and have a look at it. One of the other big changes I've made this year is starting to use more time in the infrared sauna. And this podcast is brought to you by Sunlight and Saunas. I've been starting to spend regular sessions in the sunlight and infrared sauna, and in fact, very shortly, I think in the next month or so, we're going to bring out a podcast, the whole thing recorded in the sauna. So, I mean, who knows? The quality of the podcast might go downhill rapidly once we start to really sweat. But the thing is, my sleep stats have been shooting up, and the reason I know that is because of the Oura ring that I wear, and my overnight HRV seems to be up after using the sauna, and I also sleep deeply. I come out of that sauna. If I do it in the evening, I'm very, very tired. And Joie, who runs Sunlight and Saunas in the UK, she actually told me that the main reason that she likes using the infrared sauna, the sunlight and sauna, is because of sleep. So I was interested, and I've found the real benefit to it for me as well. So I'm looking forward to recording a podcast in the sunlight and sauna. I will do a full separate blog on my Oura ring stats in the sauna once I've kind of got more data, really. But it's definitely one of my favourite current hacks, and it's not cheap, but when you look at all the science and the research, especially if you're recovering from a serious injury or an illness, when you look at all the studies about infrared saunas, it's pretty compelling. And if you are going to go for an infrared sauna, you got to go for sunlight. And I mean, you know, I might be a little bit biased, but it's ultra low EMF, non-toxic materials, beautifully crafted. You've got a screen in there, with an Android screen with Netflix and all the rest of it. They put a lot of effort into making sure that theirs are the most natural saunas around, and I just think it's pretty awesome for pain relief and sleep and relaxation and all the rest of it. So looking forward to trying more of the health benefits of that in 2020. We'll definitely record a few podcasts in there as well. And if you mention Zestology, you'll get £200 or $200 off. How's that? Time for my final podcast excerpt of this final podcast of 2019. And that was all about using artificial intelligence to get healthy. I mean, this seemed to me to be quite a fun podcast to record. It was all about getting the same benefits of a 45-minute jog in 2 20-second sprints on an AI-powered fitness bike. So Rahul Bernath is the man who's kind of put this technology together, the Carol AI-powered fitness bike. And I know it sounds too good to be true. What, you want to do 40 seconds of exercise, it's going to be the same as a 45 minutes workout. But essentially, the premise is it uses the latest artificial intelligence to compress a workout into a few seconds. It does sound barely credible, but imagine if you could have a workout kind of compressed into such a short amount of time. And on this podcast, you were given the chance to hear me get absolutely destroyed in those 2 little 20-second bits.
Okay, yeah, deep breaths.
Okay.
All right, okay, so now the screen is going to go red. Now go on, Tony. Go. There he is. So he is absolutely ripping it. Go on. Now keep breathing. Go on. Keep it up. There you go, Tony. There you go. Go on. The tiger's going to eat you, Tony. The tiger's going to chase you, Tony. Come on.
I can't.
Come on, your baby needs a dad, dude. Come on, he can't eat you, bro. Come on, keep running.
Well, since we recorded this podcast, I've been using the Carol AI bike quite a bit, and I'm really starting to enjoy the brief, intense push and the extra time that it frees up from having a workout that just takes a few minutes rather than 45 minutes or an hour. This podcast is all about health and wellness, and I always think, if you can use technology to get back into a more natural state in this busy, hectic world that we live in, then so much the better. And a lot of us don't have, I know this myself at the moment, don't necessarily have a 45 minutes or an hour every day to go and work out. So if artificial intelligence can help you out on that, then that is fair enough. Look, that's pretty much it for my review of the year 2019. It's been a year when I've spoken to heroes. I've been lucky enough to speak to some of the top scientists and experts on the planet in the area of health and wellness, and on a personal level have undergone a most extraordinary and massive change as well, which I'm truly grateful for. It has been highs and lows, I have to say, but it's just been an unbelievable year. Thank you so much for listening, as always. I know that might sound slightly kind of cheesy to say so, but I really do appreciate it. I do actually end up getting quite a bit of feedback from people online and on my website. So if you ever have a thought about the show, the podcast, any future guests, or anything really, you can get in touch with me through my website, tonyrighton.com. And I do try to reply to all of them, which isn't great for time management, but I just think is worth doing. 2020 starts with a very exciting podcast. This may well be my first podcast of 2020. It's not recorded yet, but we recorded in the next couple of weeks, and I'm going to be speaking to world longevity expert David Sinclair, who's been on Joe Rogan's podcast a few times and has shot to prominence since then. He's got some specific recommendations, supplements you can take, lifestyle practices you can put into practice that will lengthen your life and make you more healthy with it. Okay, so the supplement stuff is brilliant in particular. I think it's going to be the first podcast of 2020, but if it's not the first, it'll be very soon. David Sinclair coming up shortly on Zestology, more podcasts recorded in the sauna, and more of the same, more of the good stuff in 2020. It's all about living with energy, vitality and motivation. When you get the energy right, everything else slots into place, and when you don't feel like you've got much energy, it's just so tough, isn't it? So I'll do my best in 2020 to kind of help you live that energized life. In the meantime, have a very happy festive season and New Year as well. Have a good one. I'll be back on the 1st of January, and as always at the start of January there will be a specific program to get you feeling energized in possibly the least energizing part of the year. It's a bit dark and cold outside, isn't it? And Christmas is over, but I'll do my best. Until then, have a good one, and I'll see you in January.